Are we good?
Good afternoon.
Hi. Welcome, everyone. My name is Leslie Kirby, and I'm the chair of the Community Relations Committee through the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Today, we have with us Jerome Moore from NOA, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. I'm very excited to have Jerome here with us to share with the group a little bit more about NOA. Jerome, as you probably know, our group was a founding member of NOA. We were at the very first meeting where we decided on the initial platform, but some on the call are going to be unfamiliar. So can you tell us a little bit about NOA and how you got involved with it?
Yep. Thank you all for inviting me to this lunch and learn. I didn't get my lunch though. I was expecting my lunch, but next time. But yeah, so I've been a part of NOA almost a year now. I started on October 8th. And just a little bit about myself before I became a part of NOA. I am a unicorn. I am a Nashville native, and so we're rare. But I have been away for a couple of years doing some economic and community development abroad. Before returning back here to Nashville, I lived in China for 2 years, in Xiamen, China, doing community and economic development. Lived in Costa Rica for a year, being a director for an NGO, and also doing some work with the U.S. Embassy. And then I was here in Nashville for 2016, 2017, doing a lot of the work with nonprofits such as The Contributor, Salvation Army, Souls for Souls. And then before I returned back to Nashville, I did Peace Corps for 2014, 2015, and I was in South America, Paraguay, doing that stint. And so I've been bouncing around a lot of community and economic development experience. Went to Pearl Cohn High School, graduate of MTSU, graduate of Trevecca as well. And then I went to Phoenix, Grand Canyon University in Arizona. And so no more school for me. I'm finished for life. I'm done. And so that journey has, led me back here, getting involved, still continuing involved into organizing. I come more from a community economic development background, which is similar, but it has some differences. So NOA reached out to me, being a Nashville native, and me having some relationship with NOA in the past, about an organizer position that they had coming up, and would I be interested in, applying for that role. And I intended on coming back to Nashville at the end of 2019 anyway, which is great timing because I thought I got away from COVID-19 in China, that hit like in December, and I left right in at the end of September. But hey, it caught up with me here in the United States. So wasn't expecting that. But here we are with our own pandemic. And so since joining NOA in October, and just to give you a brief overview for people who don't know, kind of like you mentioned, who NOA is. So NOA is an anti-racist faith-based coalition that is multicultural, also multi-generational and interfaith. It's comprised of congregations, community organizations, labor unions that work to amplify the power of ordinary people, give voice to those in Nashville who may not feel they have a voice or don't recognize the power that they have to really change the community here in Nashville. And so it's a great organization for people who are looking to get involved in social issues or want to know what social issues there are out there and what can they do to solve those issues that may be particularly happening in their community. And we have a diverse communities right here in Nashville. So everybody's interest in it may be a little different. Since joining, we have 3 task forces. We have, before I joined, let's take that back. Before I joined, we had economic equity and jobs task force. We had the educational task force. We had affordable housing, and we had a criminal justice working group. But since then, the criminal justice working group has been transformed back to a full task force, especially being in the social climate that we're in today. It definitely needs to be a primary topic of NOA and just any kind of community-based organization. We also now have a young adult caucus. It's for, getting young people that are 40 and under. And so for those that are 40 and over, I apologize. I'm not calling you old, but you're not a young adult. And so, looking at NOA, in the demographic and just being realistic, it's like, hey, we needed to get younger. We needed to change our demographic up a little bit, and we need to get more young folks like myself more engaged in community organizing, but also being informed on what's going on. How do you have conversations with your council member, with the mayor, with your school board members? All of these people work for us, and so we all have that access, but a lot of us just don't know how to get access or don't know that they're actually reachable. And so the Young Adult Caucus has been able to do that for a lot of young people thus far. We have about 15 to 20 active members. So if you have any young adults that that's part of the Jewish Federation, please send them our way. We can take as many as you all can send us. And so right now, leading the Young Adult Caucus, and I'm also the lead organizer of the Criminal Justice Task Force, which we have kind of 3 subgroups right now, which is mental health diversion, cash bail reform, which Urban Vinnick, who's I think I've seen on the call, is part of that subgroup, power mapping group, and we also have excessive force. And so those are the 3 kind of primary issues that our Criminal Justice Task Force focus on within the task force. And so everybody, we all come together as a collective, but definitely everybody may be more interested in cash bail reform, like Irwin, or mental health diversion, or excessive force. Just whatever your interest may be, but we definitely still work and be very transparent within the task force itself. And so with that, as you all know, there's been, George Floyd situation, there's been the Breonna Taylor situation, there's been the recent Jacob Blake situation. We had our own situation here in Nashville and Edge Hill with Miss Hicks, I believe it was her last name, where we could have been easily a Breonna Taylor situation. So we're definitely being urgent and intentional right now, specifically around criminal justice issues. Our great Governor Lee has, just recently criminalized peaceful protests. And so it's definitely a time to be urgent, be intentional, and take direct action, and call out decision makers to the table to change some of these laws and policies that are going to hold themselves accountable, that's going to hold police officers accountable, but also save lives, and particularly for Black and Brown people to be able to to matter, as we go through our daily life. So that's kind of the spiel of me, myself, and also kind of the things that we have going in NOA. If anybody's interested in learning more or getting a full scope of our task forces, I would definitely encourage everybody to attend our monthly board meetings, which are the second Tuesday each month. So we have one coming up next week on September 8th. So please plan to attend that. We also have 2 kind of things that's happening around criminal justice. We have a press conference that we're doing on the September 10th, addressing the issues around policing that is happening nationally and locally. This will happen on Murfreesboro Road, 600 Murfreesboro Road, at the police station right there connected to the Family Safety Center. And that will be at 2:00 on Thursday. And so if you can come out, please come out. We will have masks, hand sanitizers, but also a list of demands, and really addressing the police, kind of some of the things that need to be addressed, and some policies that need to be changed right now. Like, we can't wait anymore. We're done meeting. We didn't talk to everybody. It's time to just make the right decisions. And if they can't make the right decisions, right, maybe they should resign and put somebody in place that can make the right decisions. And same thing, when it comes to policing, it's a service that us as taxpayers pay for. And just like any other service, when we no longer want the service, or the service is no longer the services is no longer good, right? We request new services, and I think it's a time for us to request new services from our police officers, our police department that we fund. And so please, if you can join us, I can put some more information about that in the chat. And then following the press conference, we have a Criminal Justice Task Force Reimagining Public Safety Forum that will happen on September 17th. I know it's a lot of stuff going on, right? It's like I said, these are urgent matters. So we're like on the ball with these events and these direct actions, but this will be a Zoom form. So any and all could attend no matter where you are. And that will be on the 17th, which is also a Thursday at 6 p.m. And Erwin will actually be a part of the agenda. So you get to hear Erwin speak and see Erwin speak as well. And our guest will be Quincy Toombs, Councilmember Quincy Toombs, who's also the chair of the Budget and Finance, Barry Freeman of the NYU Policing Project, and Matthew Talbert, who's a part of the Safer Schools Nashville. So we're going to be talking about the issues of policing around in our schools, policing and dealing with the mental health, and also what does it mean when people say defund the police or reallocate funds from the police? How does that happen? And that's a budget question, right? So I think Quincy will really be able to help us understand what they really mean. So that's all the great things that's happening with NOA and the Criminal Justice Task Force. So please, any questions that you all may have, I'm here to answer them.
Let's back up just a little bit before we focus in specifically on criminal justice. So again, for people who aren't familiar, can you talk about how NOA comes up with these topics and decides what to focus on? So it's really a true democracy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so far as with the task forces, there's a issues convention that happens every few years where our member organizations, such as you all, due paying organization. That's important. You got to pay your dues in order to have a vote, right? And so that we have a convention where you all are paying member organizations vote on what task forces you all want to see NOA establish and the issues you want to see NOA focus on. And so I missed the last one, which was this past summer, because I came in October and that happened June, July, or something around that time, right? And so unfortunately, again, the Criminal Justice Task Force just missed it and it was transformed into a working group, but we felt we needed to be a task force, especially with everything that's going in now. So the executive committee and the member organizations of NOA approved us to be a task force again. And so that was a great thing, a needed thing. So that's how that process happened. So it's like you said, it's definitely a true democracy and everybody definitely gets a vote. And you all make these task forces possible.
Right. So for the Criminal Justice Task Force, are there specific actions other than coming to these meetings and events? What is it that you're most looking for people to do right now?
Well, right now, we need all hands on deck. Anybody that cares about saving lives and in particular, Black and brown lives and just a discrimination and the laying right out this not caring of their lives. Anybody that has any interest in that and really want to get boots on the ground, especially when it comes to policy. And I know it's a crazy time right now because of the pandemic, right? And everybody has different risk factors. Some people have different health things, right? And so there's many things that we're trying to be creative about, like doing car van parades where, we can do a direct action and we can stop some traffic to really get our points across. We can target a decision maker like the mayor or Governor Lee or a council member, just maybe riding by their residential area, and, causing some noise, who knows? But those are the type of things that we have to be creative with now in this pandemic that we're in, but also just sending letters and emails to your council members and to your state representatives about the changes that you want to see happen. We have the mayor and the new police chief process is coming up. I don't know if you all have seen the survey, that they want all the community to kind of respond to. Things like that really helps, flooding their emails and things like that really, really helps, and just having it in the archives and saying, hey, I sent in my recommendations of what type of new chief we want. I sent in my recommendations what type of policing policy that we want. And so we need all of those kind of organized people together at this time if you want to do those things. And it's a role for everybody, for sure. I'm not an arts and crafts person. So when we do this action on Thursday, I would not be designing any poster boards or anything like that. And so, but yeah, like there's definitely a role for everybody, for sure. Even if it's just learning, right? That like there's a place for that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the recent event in Edge Hill involving the no-knock warrant for people who didn't hear?
Yeah, so thankfully now that, the West Precinct is the first precinct in Nashville that has the body and dash cams. And from my understanding and speaking with the mayor, all the police precincts will have body and dash cams by spring 2021, which is, which we need them kind of quicker than that, right? With these evidence, we would like to have them a little faster than that. But just coincidentally, the responders to the Edge Hill incident came from the West Precinct, and that's how we got the footage, right? That that went into the warrant being served. So there's a huge difference on search warrants and arrest warrants, and so I'm not gonna get too in detail into it, but in this particular situation, it was definitely a search warrant because they was looking for an individual that did not live at that residence anymore. So clearly there wasn't enough stakeout knowledge that would have been done. Maybe they didn't communicate enough with the housing office about who lives at that residence. It was just mishandled this in so many ways. But thank goodness for the body cam so we could see that. And so what happened is the police knocked, the body cam, so they knocked, but they did not give the home owners, residents, time enough to respond. They just literally knocked and waited maybe a couple of seconds as it showed on the body cam and just busted in the door. And the family, the lady that answered the door, she was unrobed, had kids in there. And again, it was the wrong residence. And so same instance happened in the Breonna Taylor case. They did not bust it in, and then her boyfriend responded fire because they did not know what was going on. It was just you just busting in people's door. Again, the wrong residence in that situation as well. And so that is what happened in Edge Hill. And so one of the demands we're going to be calling for is the suspension of all no-knock search warrants in Nashville. They just don't need to happen. And the interim chief, John Drake, decommissioned the officers immediately right after he seen the body and dash cam footage. Again, thank God for that. And then tried to contact with our COB director, Jill Fitchard, which, as many of you all may know, the police department has not really been working with the COB, the Community Oversight Board, since its inception. Just has not cooperated. And so hopefully under new leadership, with a new police chief, that can change. But that's one of the things we're really advocating for in a new police chief, is that they work very closely with our Community Oversight Board, which 135,000 Nashvillians voted for. And so let them do their job.
Right. Do you have reactions to John Drake? Are things improving? Do you feel like the transition will be okay to the new chief?
Well, I think I don't know John Drake personally, and I haven't had a chance to really talk to him or talk with him. But how he responded to the situation was a great response. He decommissioned the officers, right, and he went to contact Jill Fisher of the COB immediately. I don't know what more you can ask for in that particular situation, other than just changing the no-knock search warrant policy. Like, that would be the next step I would like for the police department to take. It's something I would, advocate the mayor to also be a part of that, happening, expeditiously.
Is NOA involved in the process officially to select the new chief?
As officially as we can be. And so we have been in contact with the mayor's office since Chief Anderson resigned. And so one of the things they asked from NOA to do is to submit our characteristics and attributes we wanted to see in the new police chief. And then we actually had a WebEx call with the mayor's office, and then the primary consultant, Gary Peterson, who will be doing the national search. And so we was able to, again, express what we wanted to see in the chief, and I'm pretty sure other organizations they reached out to as well. But we was able to express what we wanted to see in the chief and some of the things we wanted to see him or her address in our city. And then also I had a really good one-on-one conversation with Gary Peterson. He's a former police chief himself. He understands kind of the systemic discrimination that goes into selecting a police chief, and that's why he's in it, and his story and stuff is just truly amazing. So that made me feel comfortable that he's a part of that process. But at the end of the day, it's up to the mayor. The mayor selects the chief at the end of the day. And so all of the things that are in place, go through the HR, talk to community organizations. I think those are all just good protocols, and makes us feel like we're a part. But at the end of the day, the mayor selects the chief, and hopefully he listens to us. Hopefully he's listening to the surveys that are coming into his office that they put together and wanted us as community members to answer. And we'll see at the end of October, I believe, is when the new chief should be selected.
Well, as you pointed out, the mayor works for us, so he should be listening to us. Let's talk a little bit about cash bail. I think that there's still a lot of misunderstanding about that process. And for people who are still listening to politicians at all, some politicians, I think, are spreading disinformation about cash bail. So can you tell people very simply what it is and what NOAA is trying to do to stop it?
Right. So I actually may not be the best person for cash bail because I'm learning so much about cash bail myself, cash bail reform, right? But we do have a great person on the call right now that's a part of NOAA, and Erwin Bennett, who would be able to give you a way better detail on cash bail than myself, honestly. And I'm not going to try to sit up here and act like I'm just an expert in everything. And that's, I'm an organizer, but really what runs NOAA are the leaders like Erwin and so many others that are knowledgeable about these things. And I just help and assist in organizing, making that possible. So I don't know if Erwin wants to speak on that a little bit on the chat, or chime
Erwin,
in.
are you able to chime in here?
Sure. So the way our criminal justice system works is that if someone is arrested, they are taken down to what is popularly called night court, but night court runs all the time. And night court is presided over by individuals who are called magistrates. And magistrates are lawyers. They are selected by the general sessions judges to set bail for anybody who is arrested. There's a great deal of controversy over how that bail process is set. Bail is supposed to be intended to assure somebody's appearance at a later time, later court proceedings, and it's supposed to take into consideration somebody's length of time in the community, their personal connections, a lot of different factors which lead one to conclude that they are more than likely than not to appear at later times than during the proceedings. And if you, and the presumption is that if a bail amount is set for you, that is a dollar amount, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, that will be additional incentive for you to appear at these later proceedings. So what happens is that somebody's taken down, they're arrested, the magistrates set an amount of bail, and normally those bail amounts are not paid by the person, but they're paid by a person called a bail bondsman. And you basically pay a percentage of the bail to the bail bondsman. The bail bondsman posts the bail, and you walk out. The problem is that the data doesn't support the presumption that people who are charged with nonviolent misdemeanors will not appear for later proceedings if they are let out on their own recognizance. And as a result of that, we have many people who are charged with low-level crimes who are sitting and rotting in jail because they cannot post their bail. And if they can't post their bail, if they can't get out out of jail, they tend to lose their jobs. It tends to have very bad effects on their family, and it has lots of collateral consequences which are not necessary. So we are involved in lots of different efforts to evaluate the bail process as it is done here in Nashville. And this is a nationwide effort to encourage as many, or to result in a process where as many people as possible who are charged with low-level nonviolent crimes will be released on their own recognizance, which means what they say is, when it's time for me to come to court, I'll come to court without having to post bail.
Erwin, would you also mention that some people plea when they're stuck in jail for a long time?
Well, that's part of the other concern is that as you're sitting in jail waiting, if you can't post your bond, it is more likely that you will take a plea bargain in order to get out. And if you plead to any kind of crime, that sits on your record. You could also plead to a low-level felony, and if you nonviolent felony, and if you plead guilty to a nonviolent felony, one of the consequences of that is you can't you can't vote, you can't get public housing. So the bail setting process at the magistrate level really has a impact throughout the criminal justice system and needs to be reformed.
Couple of questions to follow up with that. First, is somebody posted that they've heard that there are places that have ended cash bail completely. Is that true? Are there places that have done this successfully? Actually, let's answer that one first and then.
Well, yeah, in fact, Kentucky does not have cash bail.
Okay.
Not too far away from us.
No, not too far at all. So when we hear politicians say things like, if we end cash bail, it makes us less safe. Is there any benign interpretation of that? I mean, or
no, because any week, people who are charged with serious crimes are released because they post cash bail. That doesn't mean they're not going to commit any crime. That just means they had the money in order to get out of jail. They had to get out of jail free card.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about systemic racism, and maybe Jerome, shift back to you for this. What are your thoughts on this issue? So you have people telling us now at the national level that there is no systemic racism in this country. I'll leave that there and just see what you have to say about that.
Well, I can understand how, certain people of certain color maybe will feel that there is no systemic racism in the United States. That's I don't, maybe they live in a bubble. I'm not sure, but I would definitely say, as a Black man living in the United States, and as a Black man that has, kind of well traveled and lived in several different countries, for an extended period of time, and really immersed myself, that the extent of systemic racism is deep throughout our whole culture, and white supremacy has a lot to do with that and how far it is stretched. Just my own personal story, just growing up, I've been definitely conditioned, not by white people, but by Black people, on certain ways to respond, how to act, how to talk, just so I can be eligible for, possibly eligible for opportunities here in the United States of America. Now, I know, that's not everybody's experience, and I can see how some people, may not get that because they're just not their experience of living here in the United States. But it definitely exists, and I believe in this particular time, there's enough data to show that, systemic racism is here. If you just look at the labor market when it comes to white and Black names, when it comes to jobs and employment. The Harvard did a study, where I want to say, if I remember correctly, with the same resume, with the same credentials, that a person with a white name is 10 times more likely to get a call back. It's just those things in itself kind of points to, there is, systemic racism happening. And I think it's been socially fabricated that way. If you just look at the history of the United States, yes, there are a lot of problems in every community, black, white, yellow, orange, no matter what color. We all going to have problems. But the issue is, in my eyes, that when you demonize and criminalize one particular group more than other, to make it seem like, oh, it's only black on black crime, or it's only black folks that do this, or black or brown folks that do this. Like, you're definitely creating a narrative for not only the United States, but also people outside the United States to have a certain perspective about black folks. If you look at our prison system, over 50% of the prisons are filled with black and brown people. How is that the case when we only black folks, 12, 13% of the population, and we don't commit any more crimes than anybody else? And so there's definitely enough data now for anybody that that loves to read, and a lot of people like facts. And now there's this thing of alternative facts, right? And so there's a lot of information now that definitely points to a whole lot of disparities, that advocate and show that, hey, yeah, maybe black and brown folks are, having a different experience and not having the same type of opportunities socially and economically that others are having. And so, and that's just the case. Now, I don't go into that thinking that, and myself personally saying, I'm going to let that hold me back from being who I am, or from believing that I can't do something. Now, I understand it may be different barriers, right? There may be a harder challenge just because of the culture in the country that I live in, but I don't let that deter me personally or use it as an excuse. Now, facts are facts, and I think excuses are something else, but I would never be a person to use my blackness as a specific reason why I couldn't accomplish something. Now, if I was white, maybe I would be further along in my accomplishments, possibly in my goals, possibly. I'm not sure, but I don't let that affect me and what I believe I can or can't do personally. And I believe that we all have the individual power to change the communities that that we live in, to make them what we want to see. And I'm definitely a person, community over politics any day. That's just me. And but yeah, it definitely it definitely exists in my humble opinion, and it's definitely something that I think only policy can really tackle. You can't change people's mind. People are going to be people, and if it was about people, people die. So you would think that kind of conditioning and that thinking would die along with it, but it's fabricated in policy, that perpetuates it. And so until we change policy, it will always be disparities. It'll always be systemic racism, fabricated in our system here in the United States.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about community changers and how that impacts what you're doing with NOA?
Yeah, so Community Changes is an organization I started a few years back doing my stint abroad, and realizing that there are a lot of great community projects that happen all over the world, big and small, but they go kind of, the stories of the people who start them in the projects themselves kind of go unknown, because they're so focused on just doing the work. And so really believing in community, and really believing that if people saw people that live similar lifestyles to them making huge impacts in their community, they would be encouraged or recognize that they have the power to do the same thing in their community. And so I've been doing this a couple of years now. And this was what I was doing in China. This was what I was doing in Costa Rica. And this was all inspired by me being able to get my first abroad experience in Paraguay. I had no idea that I would be doing this type of work growing up. I thought I was going to the NBA, right? But I stopped growing, that kind of, stunted my goals, And so, and then I didn't have any immediate community or family that did anything abroad, really wasn't doing anything community organization or service wide, really. So, just my inkling for adventure really led me to this point. I wanted to, really just get a different experience and really immerse myself, learn another language. And I figured, like, I'm broke. I can't, how can I do it for free? And so I used Google, thank the world for Google, and came across Peace Corps. And that's what really opened everything up for what I'm doing now with community changes and linking that with NOA, and really just believing that us as community members can really change whatever we really want to change that's happening or not happening. And sometimes we need a little inspiration by seeing other people do it that may be in a similar situations than us. And so that's what community changes does. So go to the website, jeromenomed.com, get you some merchandise, and yeah.
Great. Sometimes when I talk to people about NOAA, they say it feels overwhelming. Like there's so many meetings that happen and all these task forces and everything. So for a beginner who might want to just get started, what's the easiest way to get involved with NOAA?
The easiest way to get involved is definitely coming to the monthly board meeting. That's where you're gonna, and that's again, that happens the second Tuesday of every month, and we have one coming up on September 8th, which is next Tuesday. That's where you're gonna get kind of a good summary of everything that's going on. Unfortunately, we're not doing physical meetings now, so you can't really have that social interaction you could before. But through Zoom, you can always share emails, and you might see a picture of a person that looks friendly and might look like a good person to talk to. Got to gauge it that way. But that would be the best way. And I would also say reach out to myself or Mike Hodge or the other organizer, Brian Zerolic, and just do a one-on-one. Just we can just have a good 30 to 45-minute conversation about kind of what your interests are. What are you looking to do? What type of journey have you had that led you to this point to want to get involved now? And so doing a one-on-one with one of the organizers or attending the monthly board meeting would be the two things I would tell somebody who's interested in NOAA to do first, because it can't be one-on-one. We have 3-4 task forces. Task forces in itself has a whole bunch of meetings. And so, it can, and you might feel like, well, what am I doing? A lot of people, it's a lot. It's, as an organizer, it's a lot as well too. So.
And Deborah posted in the chat, those meetings start at 6:30, right?
Correct, 6:30, correct.
And Deborah put a link to your website where
perfect.
people can find more information about the community changers. And Deborah, did you put up earlier, I think you put up the NOAA link as well? Yeah, it's up here. So there are links in the chat for all those materials for anyone who wants to get more information. Do any of the rest of you have questions? You've been a quiet group today. I think we have enough people. If you do have a question, why don't you just unmute yourself and ask directly to Jerome?
I must have been giving some great information if nobody
You
had.
have, everyone's processing, so a lot to take in.
I have a question. How optimistic are you, Jerome, about these changes happening, like the no knock?
Yeah, and so I'm very optimistic. I think it's just the right timing, and for things like this for change like this to occur. And we at NOAA, we try to make sure we're clear about kind of what we want, and is it really winnable, right? Is it really a winnable issue cut? And we really feel like this is a really winnable issue cut with just everything that has happened, right down the street in Kentucky. and something that could have possibly happened right here in Edgehill in our own Nashville community. So I'm very optimistic about it. And, you know, the most important thing for NOAA to do is just make sure we be consistent and put pressure on our decision makers to make these changes happen. Because it can be exhausting, right? But I always try to remind people that, you know, the Montgomery bus boycott lasted 381 days. You know, that's a year and 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, 17, 16 days. And so if during that time, if they can do that, you know, I think we can match it at least and get some change here if we're really serious about it, right? And intentional about it. And that's what we always have to make sure. How serious and how intentional about this change? How passionate is it in the minds and hearts of just not NOAA, but also the rest of the community members, right? And that's important because, again, you know, it's just not about not what NOAA wants, but, you know, building those relationships with other community members that outside of NOAA and listening and seeing what they're talking about and the changes they want to see all plays a huge part in the decisions and the issues that we cut at NOAA.
Just to follow up on that, Jerome, and to Francis. So when we were working on establishing the Community Oversight Board, I guess it was a little over a year ago, and I'll be honest, even those most on front on that did not actually think that was going to happen. Even the ones most committed and really taking the lead privately really were not convinced. And so it came as this really amazing, uplifting, positive response when it did. And it reminded me, and I think others, that never give up ahead of time. Like, don't give up prior, like fight as hard as you can for as long as you can. And then if it doesn't work, figure out another way to come around to it. I've been rereading David Halberstam's book called The Children, which is about the civil rights movement and specifically about Nashville in that movement. And Jerome, you're exactly right. None of those changes happened easily or quickly. And there was sadly a lot, even at the Woolworth's lunch counter, there was a lot of violence that they had to suffer through to make these changes. But, you know, they didn't give up and keep turning back, trying again. So Francis, even sometimes when it seems really like, I don't know, there's so many issues and it seems so insurmountable, never give up in advance.
Yeah, we all gonna have to make sacrifices. That's just what it comes down to, and it can be hard to do, especially now. You know, everything on the surface looks like everything is equal. Like we all have Netflix and Wi-Fi, and you know all of these things that you know keep us pretty content. Like, oh, you know, I can watch my show. You know, even though people is dying outside, you know, it can be kind of easy to ignore or easy to dismiss or easy to say it's not affecting me, and that can go over all cultures and races. And so we all just have to definitely make sacrifices, and it's definitely a fight for sure. And it takes organizations like NOAA, which is very unique. You know, we have labor unions, congregations, organizations. It's just very unique makeup, and we have a lot of power. You know, we have a lot of power. We have a lot of people that have relationships with a lot of other people. So that's what it's going to take, those relationships. And NOAA really is, if it's one thing you probably always going to hear with NOAA is building relationships. Because we may not always agree. We might not always see the things the same way, even though we might have the same goal, but being able to agitate each other on that and be able to not take it personal all comes around their relationship that we have built with one another.
I think you make an excellent point that it's really easy to be complacent. And so in this time and space, I think it's very important to not be complacent, any of us, if we can avoid it. Are there other questions that people want to ask to Jerome?
Hi, my name is Diane Vanette. I just was wondering how many organizers are in NOAA in Nashville, and where do you get your training?
So right now we have 3 organizers with NOAA, 3 full-time organizers, me, Mike Hodge, and Brian Zaralik. And our training comes through the Gamelia Network training. And we have, so this is good information. And so We all of the organizers go through the national leadership training, which is 7 days, extensive. It's like boot camp. It's not the typical professional development training, but this training is also available to our NOAA leaders. And so I don't know if Erwin have you went through NLT yet, Erwin?
I have not.
Oh, shame on you. Oh my gosh. But we have one coming up in November.
Jerome, I've been through it. I would highly
you've been through
recommend. Yeah, I have. And anyone who's on this call who's interested, I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, and so and I would just preface it. It's not your typical professional development.
No.
It's not going in and you're just going to have a pamphlet and it's a presentation. No, that's not that. And so, just drop the link in the chat about the Gamelia.org. But that's where we get primarily all of our training through. And we try to do trainings, every so often. We have like understanding public and private relationships training, organized money, organized people training. We have how to do a public action training. So we have all of these different type of leadership training, which is essential, especially if you're new to organizing and new to organizing organization. And I say all that to say we have a national leadership training coming up in November. This training was supposed to happen in March, but COVID-19 hit. And this was going to be at the Scarrett Bennett campus. But this training coming up in November is going to be, I'm pretty 80-90% sure is going to be available via Zoom, just because of everything that's going on. And so if you're interested in that, please check it out on the website, just the information. But I'm definitely more than willing to go into more detail about that specific training and other trainings that we have through NOAA that involve Gamelia trained organizers.
Yeah, and anyone who wants to reach out to me also, I'd be happy to share about my experience with that training. It was in the community I lived before coming to Nashville. As we were getting ready to start an organization similar to NOAA was sort of what we were aspiring to be in a smaller community. So yeah, I did attend that training, and anyone who would like to ask me about it, I'm happy to follow up with you separately.
Any other questions for Jerome?
I have another question.
Sure.
Is the police union part of NOAA? I mean, I assume not, but I thought I'd ask.
No, we kind of don't get along with like the FOP too well, and again, their job is to protect the interests of police. And one of those things is like diplomatic immunity, right? Which is one of the things that keep police officers from being held accountable for excessive force and police brutalities. And so instead of kind of advocating for maybe better salaries, better trainings, and all of these other things, they advocate to try to get police officers off of killing unarmed people. Yeah. So but not to say they're not, there's some good, officers a part of the union, I'm sure, but their job is to protect the interests of the police, which is understandable, but
So is anything being done to change their point of view in terms of holding police officers accountable?
And so that's what the COB is for. And again, the police department, FOP, they just haven't been, wanting to be in a workable situation since the inception of the COB. They have not wanted to work with them and just really not be like partners in making policing better in Nashville. And that was mainly due to Chief Anderson. And so hopefully with a new police chief, that can change. And, that really lies in the hands of, Mayor Cooper.
Yeah, I think that that's the hope, Francis, is that in the search for the new chief, there will be somebody that will be more open and willing to work with the Community Oversight Board, because that is exactly what that group is supposed to help do, is to represent the community to the police department. It has not worked so well yet, but the hope is that with a new chief there will. And also, I just wanted to add one other piece about the case in Rochester that I'm guessing many people have seen the visual on the that just came out. It happened a few months ago with police arresting a man in Rochester, putting a mask over his face for COVID safety, and he was killed. He was clearly having a mental health breakdown. His family called the police because he was having a mental health breakdown, and they didn't know what to do other than call the police. And this is part of the conversation of criminal justice reform. And while sometimes the hashtag defund the police, but really what that means is using those resources and the money more effectively, because I'm guessing that that family, had they had the option to call someone, a mental health professional to come, they absolutely would have done that. But because the way the systems are in place, they call the police. And that's one of the places where some of these reforms could be really helpful. The police also are not trained in that and don't really even want to necessarily do those kinds of calls, but that's all there is right now in some communities. So that's another piece of this is, yeah.
What I'd add to that is for two comments. One is, if this was that incident happened in LA, rather than send a squad car out with 2 police members, what they would have sent out was a mental health worker along with the policeman. That's community.
Right. That's right. Right.
And there would have been
that's right.
De-escalation.
Right.
Just, Francis, a comment on the union. Around the country, police unions have been the biggest obstacle to changing culture within police departments, but I would say the same thing can be true of teachers' unions and anything else. Their main job is to protect their own ranks. And I don't blame them, because there has been there's been abuse of people from the top down in both professions, but that's really what their job is. And it's not to reform their own system. I wish it was, but they are represented on this best practice committee the mayor appointed.
Right. And so I just put a link into some of the things Deborah was talking about when it comes to mental health diversion and a crisis intervention team. And so they do have a good model program that we are looking at now at NOA called Cahoots in Albuquerque, Oregon, that does exactly that, respond to mental health calls, and it's a whole nother phone number and things like that. And so NOA has been advocating for that for quite some time here, but it just, again, police leadership. And so hopefully that can be something that is changed here in the future when it comes to mental health diversion and not trying to jail our way out of mental health issues and putting those individuals in a place where they can't get the help that they really need, and potentially, just sitting in jail, rotting away, or getting out and getting put right back in jail. I mean, not getting the professional help that they need. So that's another big thing that we're working on as part of the Criminal Justice Task Force. And well, we'll see. We had a really good conversation with Deputy Chief Loki, who's she's been in this position a little over 6 weeks, of the behavioral health services of the police department. So, she said herself that, police officers are not the best people to respond to these type of issues. So we're looking forward to really working closely with her and coming up with a different solution. And when it comes to defunding, reallocating funds from the police, hopefully it can go into programs like that, where if it's a mental health professional or counselor, partner with police or some type of alternative solution than other than just jailing somebody and putting them in a situation they don't need to be in, and possibly killing them because you don't understand how to respond properly.
Jerome, our police department claims or boasts about engaging in community policing. The truth is that when you talk to people from within, we just do it cosmetically. We don't really dig deep as other communities have. And that is
Right.
part of what we hope a new chief will bring to us, is a commitment, not just a cosmetic, hey, we're doing it kind of stuff.
Right. Superficial. Right.
So somebody just posted in the chat a question about the education equity. So I know your particular work is on criminal justice, but NOAA does have these other platforms. Can you talk a little bit about the education task force and what some of their priorities are?
Yeah. So the education task force, so the criminal justice task force and education used to be one task force before the convention, issues convention, just happened this past summer. So it kind of broke off. And so the education task force focused a lot on expulsions and expansions disparities amongst Black students, because they were just getting suspended at a just astronomical rate compared to other students of different ethnic backgrounds. And so that's been one of their main focuses still today. Now they're really focusing on safety equity, far as school resource officers and social and emotional learning, restorative justice, and figured out the best way of like, hey, how can we get out of just suspending or sending students home? We need social and emotional learning counselors in the schools more than we need police officers walking down the hallway and possibly being the first person that engages students when they do something in class. And then some of these same students have to see officers when they leave school. And so it's like, you're hovering over me at my locker, and then when I leave, I got to see you in my community doing the same thing. So that's a lot of the work that they're doing. They're also trying to focus on culturally responsible curriculum where everybody is represented properly. And even though, you know, and getting outside of just your Geo-European American history, and, you know, pretty much, you know, create a more equitable novelty environment for all students to be represented in the proper way in its totality, and not just giving you a little piece and say, okay, yeah, that's the narrative, that's the story. And so we moving on to the next section.
All right, thank you so much. Does anybody have any final questions before we let Jerome get back to his day? All right.
Feel free to
so
email me. I'll put my email in the
for
chat.
sure. And I think we have a couple of other members who are interested in getting more involved. We did get one last question here is, what advice do you have for white people who want to be more involved?
I think just that, become knowledgeable about how to use your white privilege. And I think, you know, Black folks and brown folks are always looking for allies, and allies that are genuine and authentic, allies that are allies 365 days throughout the year, and just not when something is exploding. And just be, you know, just be careful about asking, you know, Black and brown people to, I guess, you know, share their trauma, you know, so you can understand better, you know, because that can be taxable on anybody, and draining on any person, right? And so I think, you know, also reading and also talking, if you have Black friends or brown friends or colleagues or peers, family members, you know, talk with them, you know, about what you can do, and try to get a better understanding of what's going on. But I think most people understand what's going on, and know, and any human being, whether you're Black or brown, if you've seen some of the stuff that was just happening to a human, you didn't know the color, you just know it was just awful, you want to do something about it to change it. And so just act, you know, just act, get out there and just act, and don't be afraid to say, I don't know, or I don't understand. You know, the worst thing that can happen is a white person acting or faking like they know and don't know. Like that's not a good look. But just saying, you know, I don't know is definitely appreciated, and then, you know, we can build from there. So
great. Thank you again. And another call for, we've been doing a how to be an anti-racist community read within the Jewish community. So that's another place that's a good entry point. We have another group getting ready to start. Erwin is going to be conducting that group. So if you'd like to get involved, contact Erwin or Deborah for that. And please join NOA at the next meeting, September 8th, 6:30 p.m. Via Zoom. And you can get the links from their website or from any of us. And Jerome, thank you again for joining us today. This has been super informative, and look forward
Thank you,
to
Jerome.
working with
Thank you.
in the future. For those of my regulars, next week will be our last call before High Holy Days. We'll be taking some time off around Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But next Friday, we will have a person's name who Deborah's going to help me remember. But I remember that the title of his book is OMG WTF Does the Constitution Really Say?
So
Ben
yeah,
Sheehan.
the
Yes,
author,
so
yes.
Ben Sheehan, and he'll be joining us to discuss his book. It's aimed more at younger people, but those of us who are, as Jerome pointed out, not old, but not young, I think we'll get a lot out of it as well. So join us next week at noon for that discussion. Thanks, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you all, and enjoy the weekend. Thank you. Thank you, Jerome, so much. And yes, we owe you lunch.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
We owe you lunch.